Hello and welcome back to Albert Recaps Z Nation. This week we're talking about Season 2, Episode Lucky 13. Adios, Muchachos is the title of this one. This episode concludes the arc that started last week with Party with the Zeros, and we see finally this fallout of the plan that Dr. Kurian has to inject people with the synthesized Murphy blood, whatever this stuff is. Serum, let's call it. And Kurian, at the end of the last episode, he was about to inject Vasquez with this needle, and they even showed, like, next time on Z Nation, and there's, like, somebody, like, a close-up of a needle going into a neck, and I bought it. I was like, I guess they inject Vasquez. Well, it turns out that was not Vasquez's neck. That was a misdirection. Because at the last second, Warren's like, I'm not okay with this. I don't think that this is cool. And she convinces the Queen, the head of the Zeros, to have Kurian inject himself with the virus. Or the Murphy blood, or whatever it is that he synthesized from Murphy. And Kurian's like, oh, I don't know. And we keep cutting back to Murphy, like, eating popcorn, like, whoa, what's going to happen? Because Murphy's really going off the rails here. I feel like that Murphy is maybe the most interesting character as far as change and evolution goes in this series. And he's really kind of sort of becoming dissociated from anything that is happening in the world. To the point where he's just along for the ride. I think he's trying to cope with everything that's going on with his head, everything that's going on with him being inside of the minds of these zombies, and so he's just kind of losing it a little bit, and doesn't care, really. He's just like, he's almost turning into this Joker-like figure a little bit, who's excited by this chaos, excited by what's going to happen next, because he's not stepping forward to stop Kurian from injecting Vasquez. And Warren convinces the Queen, hey, maybe we should have the guy who designed the serum injected in himself, because that's one way to know for sure. Kurian does it, and kind of like falls down, twitching a little bit, gets back up, and they're like, alright, taste test time, and shove his hand inside of a box which presumably has a zombie head in it. His hand gets all bit up, and he does not turn. And everybody's like, glory, glory, hallelujah, this is the thing. It worked. The zombie vaccine is the real deal. Yes! And Kurian's like, okay? I didn't know that's how it was going to go, but yes, it's a success. And so he starts injecting everybody, including the Queen. We cut back to him in the lab with Murphy, and he's like, he's not happy, and you can tell that he's going into like some jitter stage of whatever this stuff is that he's been injected with, where he's all like moving around and trying to get everything done, and Murphy's like, hey man, what's the hurry? What are you so worried about? And he's like, I've still got time. I can inject myself with the antidote and not be controlled with you. And Murphy basically says, no, you don't have time. I can control you. And again, Murphy's really starting to go off the deep end here. The only indication that we have that he's still a little bit human and still a little bit has empathy is that he does look at Warren, and when they're trying to give the vaccine to Warren, he says, you know what, let me do that, because they saved me and brought me here, and yay for the cure. And he fakes out injecting Warren because he doesn't want to do that to her, which I thought was really interesting. I mean, granted, Murphy doesn't have any reason to care about Kurian or anything else, but it is interesting that he's willing to screw him over so instantly and so, I mean, completely, to just be like, hey, yeah, no, you're one of my zombie slaves too. Sucks to be you, doesn't it? And so the other Zetas start to be affected by the stuff. It doesn't, I don't know exactly how the Murphy bite / Murphy serum works, but it kind of halfway zombifies you a little bit, and we see Kurian starting to really have like heavy rings around his eyes, and his lips are kind of more red than normal, and the same thing with the other Zetas. They're starting to get, half zombified, for lack of a better word. Blends is what they end up calling them, at least for now. Meanwhile, El Scorpion has taken Vasquez, who did not get injected, back down to continue to beat out a confession of him about why he tried to assassinate the Queen. And Vasquez eventually does reveal his motives. He says to Escorpion, listen, I don't care about your queen. I'm after you, and I'm after your family. Because you killed my family, I want to kill you. This is revenge. And Escorpion's response to that is maybe one of the most interesting things in this episode to me, because he basically says to Vasquez, listen, bad things have happened to me too, and now they happen to you, and it's, he basically says, you're using this apocalypse thing as some kind of an excuse because you kill people now, and you think that that's okay. I kill the people I have to, and I don't try to justify it like you're trying to justify it, because, it's the apocalypse, it's the zombies, which I thought was really interesting, because we have seen our group make these really morally questionable, and sometimes not even questionable, sometimes just this is a bad decision. We see them make these decisions in this season, and a Scorpion calling out Vasquez like that and saying, you're guilty just as much as I am. And I think he has a point. I mean, he's still a bad guy, yes, but from a certain point of view, his actions have been sort of this result of the things that he's been exposed to as well. And he's not a good guy, but it's interesting because you can almost argue that neither are the people that we're cheering for. We're just cheering for them because we know them better, because we've been with them for a long time, because they're doing something that we're kind of on board with, but they're still capable of moral wrongs, for lack of a better term for it. And I thought that was a really fascinating sort of kick back at Vasquez to sort of hold the mirror up and say, I'm not the enemy, I'm you. Me and you, a Scorpion and Vasquez, basically the same guy. And then he puts him in a box with the zombie thing, which I thought was a really interesting form of, I guess if you want to call it torture. I mean, obviously, they have the zombie chained up on the opposite side of the box so that it can't get him, but it's right there next to him. And if he moves, the zombie's going to get him. I didn't know exactly what the point of that was, other than just to freak him out psychologically, but I like the idea of psychologically breaking somebody down by putting them in a box with a zombie that can't eat them, but you can't move, or it will get you. Meantime, the rest of the group kind of realizes that there is something going on with the vaccine, quote unquote, and they decide, okay, it's time to get out of here. This is obviously gone south in a big way. We need to have a plan. We need to run while we can. They find out that the vaccine is going to turn the people into this private army for Murphy, which is an interesting dilemma for them, I think, because what you end up having, I would have liked to see what Murphy would have done with a private army. I think that it may be a little bit early in their sort of giant overarching storyline for him for that to happen, but we've seen him mind controlling zombies for a while now, and he was it's almost like he's gotten worse, because he was excellent at it at the beginning of season 1. He was, had his zombie lackeys following him around. He had Cassandra. He had the zombie strippers in episode 2, and we really haven't seen him use that power as much as he could and should be able to use it. And for them to pay that off with hey, okay, now we have the real deal. This is Murphy in control of the zombies. And maybe not all the zombies, but a significant number of people that he has under his influence. I would have liked to see that. I don't know how his mental process works. I don't know if he's able to control a whole horde of zombies or if it can only be a certain number and his mind starts breaking down. But we do see him controlling the queen a little bit as they're dealing with the problems and trying to get out. And we do see him, it's a great scene where the queen is talking to Warren, and sort of pronouncing sentence and whatnot, but the words they cut back and forth between her words and Murphy's lips moving and synchronization. And I thought that was really, really a fascinating sort of way of showing his power and his control, that he's able to make words come out of other people's mouths. But alas, it is not to be, because as the episode progresses, it turns out that the serum or the cure or whatever we're calling it is only limited to a certain time frame, because after a while, the people that Curian injected stop responding to Murphy's controlling and puppeteering and start coming after him like zombies. They are craving his blood, and it's specifically his blood. We know this because he cuts himself and drops a bunch of blood on the floor. Not a bunch, but, several drops of blood on the floor, and they all dive after it, which kind of made me wonder why he knew to do that, because I don't think that we have a lot of experience with him and these types of half-breed creatures. He had Cassandra for a while, but I got the idea that she was a little bit different in how that she was handled, and we also know that he turned that couple earlier in the episode when he gave him the zombie baby. But with them, he just gave him some instructions and left. So what exact experience he's had with these half-blend zombies, let's call them, craving his blood, I don't know. All I know is that it works, and it kind of gets across the idea that, okay, these guys want his blood. Not his brains, his blood. I have a small sliver of hope that means that we're going to get vampires eventually, or at least something like them. Like really intelligent, fast, smart, strong zombies. With the emphasis on the intelligent, like the able to plan and not mindless creatures. But the closest thing we have right now is Murphy, and he's doing his thing, so that's fine, I guess. But the group kicks off the plan to get Vasquez out, to get Murphy out, to run, because things are about to go crazy. They do manage to get Vasquez, get him out of the thing. They put El Scorpion in the cage with the zombie, which I thought was a great sort of reversal. And they run for it. They try to release the zombies that are in the compost heap that we saw in the previous episode, which I don't know exactly how that works, scientifically speaking. I understand that Z Nation doesn't care much about the science, but there's a part of me that's like, do they rot and fall apart and then use that as fertilizer, and are they giving off methane? It wasn't 100% clear to me. Somehow these rotting zombies are helping out the Zeros, and they're not able to open the doors, but Murphy uses his Murphy power to control, to make them rise up. And Warren has a great line where she says, "Let your people go, Murphy." And so the zombies all bust out, and there's a big fight between them and the Zeros. And the Zeros have with them the head of Dr. Curian, who got cut off when they went in to rescue Murphy. And that was, speaking of Z Nation, not really caring at all about the science. He's a severed head who can still speak and vocalize, despite not having lungs or vocal cords or anything. Let's not dig too deep into that and try to make something out of it. Clearly, they just don't care, if that makes sense. But it was, neat to see that sort of showdown between Murphy's zombies and the sort of half-blend zombies that were trying to get to Murphy, to see that he still does have some of his power. the gang gets away most of the way, although they climb up the hatch to get back out, past their quote-unquote border wall that we saw last episode. And luckily there's no zombies. There's a bunch of dead zombies around, but I guess all the zombies that were attacking them have wandered off or something. They get out, and as they're about to sort of make a run for it, we see a scorpion pop up like a gopher out of the hole, and he has survived this encounter with the zombie in the cage, the way he survived was so cool. And it makes me mad that, he dies like 5 minutes after that, but he says, a scorpion doesn't get bitten, a scorpion bites, and he has like zombie blood all over his face, meaning that he chewed his way out of the zombie trap. He got, he bit the zombie somehow badly enough to make the zombie stop. I don't know how you disable a brain by biting it, but he clearly has done something to get, to chew his way through this zombie that was in there in the cage with him, which I thought was just awesome. I thought that, holy crap, a scorpion biting the zombie to get away from the zombie bite. While I don't know how it worked, and they didn't show how it worked, in theory I like that idea. But then they kill him, they kick him back down into the horde of zombies, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to pull some shenanigans like other shows have. 19% sure that he's dead, because we're moving on from the Zeros. They're going to California finally this season, which really kind of bummed me out, because we've gone down there, we've dealt with the Zeros, we've met, I guess the point, I was going to say I don't understand what this episode accomplished, but I guess what it really accomplished was dealing with the villains and the Zeros in a way that would, sort of make sense for how big they've been built up over this season. But I would have liked it to progress the story a little more. I would have liked to see Murphy with the zombie army, as I mentioned earlier. Clearly we're not getting that, but we do get a kind of a nice bow on this episode. It's one of the dumbest things, but it was kind of satisfying too, because 10K looks up and they're making their escape, and he just says El Camino, and there's 6 different El Caminos that are all in perfect mint condition just sitting there, and they have a music video where they just drive off into the sunset, and they all have their own car, except for Murphy, because he rides with Morin. Maybe he doesn't have his license or something, but they're all driving along, and 10K gets to take out the little drone that had been following them earlier with his slingshot as he's driving, so he hooks the wheel or something and leans out and ching, takes out the drone. That was great. But I felt like that this could have been more. It could have led to more in the overarching Z Nation storyline, besides just being all right, well, we dealt with them Zero guys. Now we're going to California for real this time. But I'll give it a pass. I will say that I liked this. Although this episode was a step down from the last episode, there was some really seemed like sloppy editing. Scenes that kind of got cut short or were missing sort of little connective bits that made it feel a little bit off in how it was cut together. And I thought that was a little bit disappointing, whereas last week was really tight. This week felt a little bit more rushed, if that makes sense. And it felt like a longer drawn out scenario than was really required for what happened, because there was a lot of stuff that happened in the previous episode, and this episode was kind of just alright, we break free and get away. But again, I'm still okay with it. So yeah, we're into the final 2 episodes of Z Nation next week. And now we don't know what they're gonna face. We know that finally Citizen Z's coming back. We see that in the flash forward thing. We know that they're going to California, but now all of our big bads from before are gone, and we're almost starting over afresh. And I don't know what to think about that. I mean, I want to see what happens, but I'm really hoping that it kind of pays off the stuff that's happened this season, and it almost feels like that this episode was like the season finale in a way, because it gave us like a really satisfying conclusion. And if you ended the series right here and they just like go into California, you can imagine, okay, things are good, everything's good, this is awesome. But we're not ending the series here. We have more stuff to come. Citizen Z's finally coming back, which I'm happy about, but I don't know what's going on there. So we'll just have to wait and see. We will have to wait and see. I have no expectations. These final 2 episodes, I don't know anything about what I'm supposed to expect. But it's Z Nation, and I do love me some Z Nation, so I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for watching, you guys. Like and subscribe if you like this video and you want to see more. Leave a comment with your thoughts about the episode. Please, I want to hear what you guys are thinking. And I'll see you guys next week with another episode of Z Nation.